share it to my page.
Okay. Okay. All right. David, we are live.
We are live. Holy cow. Nice to see you again, my friend.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. As I was just saying before we went live here,
Uh-huh.
it's more of a selfish thing than anything because I come on wanting to share you with everybody, but in all honesty, it's more because I need something from you more than you. It's
You use me, Jeff.
I am using you, yes, and for my own gain because like we were talking a little bit ahead of time.
Right.
I am Yesterday for me was a day that I needed to slow down and take a breath, and it was overwhelming for me. I felt like I hit a brick wall. I felt like
Mhm.
everything was just stop. And this is one thing that I noticed. An observation of that was uh, people have been driving so much faster in the last 3 weeks on the roads right outside my home to the grocery store.
Mhm.
And during the days, the stoplights are pretty much a thoroughfare, and people had been driving 60 and 65 because there's no people out there, right? They're making it like a freeway almost. And what I noticed the police did is on all of the streets in Burbank, all of the stoplights hit all the time. So everybody has had to slow down.
Mm.
So when I go to the grocery store, which is a mile, I hit 5 stoplights now. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter when I go, I hit 5 stoplights. And that is the message I was getting was I need to slow down. I need to take a break, take a pause. Up until yesterday, I was having no problem getting people to come on and talk with me. And all of a sudden, I seemed to hit a brick wall.
Mhm.
The awareness of what was going on and that it's actually going to extend, no money coming in, and
Mhm.
everything sort of overcame me. And what I wanted to talk with you a little bit about today was uh, it's not really unlike anything that we've been talking about, but I need to learn to quiet my mind and quiet eh, my
Sure.
the stuff that's going on with me. And you were even saying a little bit ahead of time uh, what what you experienced yesterday. So having said all of that, I can't imagine um, uh, this what happened to me yesterday.
Mhm.
I I had to call somebody and ask to borrow money in order to pay my rent, because not necessarily because I wanted to make sure I didn't lose my home, but I want to make sure my landlords don't lose theirs.
Mhm.
And I would, by benefiting them, it actually will benefit me. But it put me in a state of humility and wondering, I've never felt this before in my life, and how many people absolutely. I'm sorry for my interruptions here.
That's okay. You're popular.
People only, well, um, yeah, to two people. but but the thing that struck me as I was going through this was the amount of people on this planet and in this country that
Mhm.
sit and worry about this on a daily basis. Their entire life has been spent, will I get food for my kids? Will I make my rent? And the
Right.
stress I was feeling, and I've never really had to feel it, and it struck me that this is a feeling that I've I've never really quite experienced like I think others do. So, uh, and then what I would like to do, if we don't mind, is do your uh, settle in. Can we do your invocation
Oh,
thing
right.
again? So that will help calm me. And
Okay.
and what also I'm hoping is that if, as we're talking, if people text questions or something on your Facebook page or me, um, we can answer them too along the way.
Sure. All right.
Okay.
So I want to remember everything that you just talked about and pause for a moment. And it's always important to pause. And in that pause, if you feel comfortable or are in a space where you can close your eyes and take some deep cleansing breaths. Last week, when we did this together, I had you breathe in for a count of elongated 3, and then hold for 2, and then release on 5. So let's repeat that. Breathe in elongated breaths on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 2, and then out slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, without me counting out loud, just establish your own rhythm of breathing in for 3, holding for 2, and releasing for 5. And wherever you are in the cycle, just do it one more time. And with that release, we are aware of the fact that we have the power to pause. Pausing, the divine pause, is to stop a train of thought, to stop something from unconsciously avalanching out of control. We have the ability to do that. And a lot of times, the best assistance for that is breath. So we can turn to the breath as a co creator, as a collaborator, and let it lead the pause and breathe us back to a place of stillness and remembrance that everything is just a thought. It's just a thought. And our lives are compacted with a bunch of thoughts that have been squeezed into story, and they're still just stories. And that stories are fluid, just as breath is fluid. And we have the capability, we have the innate talent to be able to write new stories. And so nothing is ever static. There is no finish line. And there is only a continual unveiling, a continual turning a corner and reaping the benefit of a new awareness. And so we let ourselves off the hook for what we perceive as not doing it right, because there is no right. There is only action and reaction. And as we become more aware, we can create action that is more deliberate. We can breathe and pause more at any given time to allow us to reset. So may we do that periodically throughout our hour together. May anything that we call a support system, whatever term or name that we give it, we call it in, we invite it to come and to open our heart, which might be closed, to unclench our fist, which might be in fear, to open our eyes that might be afraid to see, and to open our ears so that we may be able to hear specifically what is the divine gift that readily awaits to download itself for us. That is everything that is available for us. And so breathing, breathing in, we just say thank you. Thank you in advance. Thank you for the already having received attitude and awareness for what it is that we came to learn from this gathering today. And so it is. So it is.
I I I got tingles in my I went, what? What is that?
I got tingles.
I did. So,
So you said, what was the word you said when you were describing kind of all the stuff? Gosh, I knew it was probably going to go out of my head. But I just in terms of how do we relax, or how do we let things go, or what was the word you used?
um, you
Some-
know,
Something about story, um, or our minds, or
how
quieting our minds.
how do
That
we
was
quiet?
quieting our minds. That's it. And I always try to hear certain things, and when somebody says to you, Jeff, you need to quiet your mind, how does that make you feel?
Um, uh, Depending on the state I'm in, uh, if I'm already anxious,
Uh-huh.
I get defensive. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah,
You mean tell
exactly.
me?
Kind of punitive, it's like you need to quiet your mind, and so um, the mind is quiet, the mind is active, and so what is the advantage, or what is this thing that we're told to quiet our minds? And basically, it's about stopping or ceasing or calming the chatter. So maybe one of the things to do that we can say, because I think language is really important, is we can say, observe your mind. Just observe your mind, not quiet your mind, because that feels task oriented. I've got to do this thing. But to observe it doesn't really require anything of me. I can just sit and watch and be a voyeur of all of my thoughts, be it they frenetic or calm. And that helps because it lifts us out of this judgmental place, and we can become curious. I'm curious as to why I'm feeling this way.
Hmm.
So I was sharing with you yesterday, I all of a sudden I felt the density of everybody's stuff that I was working with them on, and all of the calls I've been taking, and managing my nonprofit foundation, and all of the mystery and the being in limbo about so many things. And it just kind of hit me all of a sudden. And I realized, sitting at my desk, I wasn't breathing, hadn't drank enough water. Um, I wasn't going outside, and I just made an agreement that I would get up and I would go out. And I was sharing with you that I started walking and ended up walking in this trance almost for like an hour, and just doing this loop around my neighborhood, and kind of sweating it out and breathing heavy a little bit and getting some oxygen in my body. And just by doing that, I removed myself from the unconscious state of the heaviness, and used physicality as a way to um, calm myself, and observe what I was thinking. So while I was walking, and I was just observing my thoughts, and going back to the things that work for me, the touchstones that work for me. And that is to just be curious. Why are you thinking that way? Where do you think triggered that, or what was the signal behind that? Because the more curious that we are, the more compassionate we are, instead of being so punitive.
Um, I, I, I can pretty much know what when I observe my thinking. I'm just afraid. Basically, is
And then it's afraid of what? So then you drop it down a little bit more. Afraid of what?
uh, my main number one concern right now is keeping my home
Okay.
at all cost. I can
At all costs. That's a lot. That's a
well,
lot of pressure. And what happens if you lose your home?
I become homeless, honestly, because I don't have.
And what happens if you become homeless?
My daughter has no place to go other than maybe with her mom, and I wouldn't be able to be around her.
And then this is where, if you know who Byron Katie is, she's a great author and metaphysician, and she had this thing called the work and the questions. And I think the first question of Byron Katie, and I shared this with a friend of yours who wrote, is because it just came to me today, is that true?
Mm.
In other words, if you lose your home, if you're homeless, if you lose, the ability to be with your daughter, are any of those things in the stages by which the fear that you have is churning over? So the fear is the soup, and then all of those things are the container of the soup of that fear. Is it true?
Not in the present, not in the moment.
So you have no substantiated evidence that any of those things will happen. These are just the worst case scenarios in our head, right?
Right.
And what are what are other options? What are the best case scenarios if you can't pay your rent?
The best case scenarios is I keep borrowing money to pay my
Is that the best case scenario?
uh, that can come in this limited thought process right now.
You don't have limited thought options. What's the best case scenario?
Um, Money magically appear. No, um,
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
don't lose my home. The best case scenario is that I get to stay here,
Okay.
and
And you don't need to be attached to the how. In other words, it
oh,
doesn't really matter how you get to stay there. Again, it could be a magical windfall of cash. It could be that all of the sudden work starts up again. It could be that you have a dialogue with your landlord and you come to some agreement and there's a deep, compassionate understanding. It does mean that you have verbal, difficult discussions about your vulnerability with people, and you find people who are more than willing to help and support you, but they don't know to do that unless you make yourself vulnerable. There's so many different options, right? That happened from this, and the best case scenario is that somehow, some way, without needing to control the how, you are taken care of.
mm,
And another best case scenario is you think that your home or the place that you are at now is numero uno, where there might be something else beyond this particular thing you're calling your home or your sanctuary that is the next evolution of Jeff. You don't know. But if you're attached or if I'm attached to the how, then we never know. But it's that ability to be curious of, I wonder how this is going to play out.
mm,
I wonder what the best case scenario options are. I say that I believe in this unlimited universe and unlimited possibility, but when push comes to shove, most of us we don't. We default over to the side of fear, and then when the fear takes over, when the fear is the lead, that's when the control mechanism starts to scream the loudest, and that's when we get locked down, rigid, and we've got to make this happen. We have to figure this out, and there's not a lot of solution that can present itself even energetically when we get into that state.
mm.
There's a um, there's a man in India, a spiritual teacher. His name is Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, not the musician. Um, and he started a foundation called the Art of Living, and it's the world's largest global humanitarian organization. I've been doing some work with them in India for my schools in the slum, and I went to hear him speak once, not too long ago, in North Carolina, and there must have been 5,000 people in this auditorium. And there was a puja, the altar, and he was there, and everybody was sitting for darshan, for his wisdom. And the person who brought me was on the team, so she moved me up to the front, and I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm just captivated by this little Indian man, and he's got this sort of giggly personality. And he said, stress is the number one killer of us all. Stress. And you know what causes stress? And everybody goes, and he said, the thing that causes stress is our attachments.
Mm.
Because when we become attached to something, we become stressful, and that anxiety is the thing that robs us of our well-being. And he goes, and I have the solution for that. And that solution is contained in one word. And he was masterful in the way that he was telling this, because he had everybody, and everybody, he goes, I would you like to know the answer? And like 5,000 people lean into him and they're like, yeah. And he goes, and that word is perhaps. You think that by marrying this person that you will have found the love of your life and that you will live this fairy tale ending. And I would tell you, perhaps. You think that if you can just stay in your home, then everything will work out and you will have no more stress or no more problems. And I would say, perhaps. You think that if you could just get that job in that other place, in that other city, that everything would finally fall into place. And I would tell you, perhaps. And I just laughed. I thought that was the funniest, wisest thing. It was such a gold nugget of wisdom because that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You know, you're attached to that house and you're attached to the idea that the house represents something. And I don't blame you because I have the same attachment. I love my place. Uh, we have, what other kinds of attachments do we have?
Well, right now for me, it's really only that. That that
Okay.
that's the only thing, based on how everything has shaped up. Now, 2 months ago, I might have been able to rattle off a lot of different attachments and things that I have, but
Okay.
this particular particular situation has
Right.
has ground everything down to one simple thing. And um, uh, based on what you were just saying, when my ex first moved out, she said, "How are you going to stay in your home? How are you going to keep this place?" And I said, "I don't know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I know that I'm going to stay here." And then I was able to turn it over then. But now the way things have shaped up,
Mm-hmm.
based on all of the attachments that I don't have, my work, and all those different kinds of things that I would be able to come up with. Everything's been ground into this one little thing. I really need to be able to try to keep my home in all of this stuff. And um,
And so what he said was not about, oh, I don't care, take it. It wasn't that. It's that as you go about the business of doing everything that you can think of to do, can you also let it go? That whatever happens, that you will somehow be taken care of.
right.
Whether it's from staying with a friend, who knows? The possibility is unlimited. But when we so bloody knuckle grip the way in which we think it has to look, that's the most severe form of attachment. And that's the thing that causes the pain. And that's the thing and the stress. And that's the thing that kills and robs us of our spirit, not just physically, but our spirit. And so it made so much sense to me because we're attached to our titles. We're attached to what people think about us. We're attached to possessions and things. Uh, we're attached to our looks and health and all of that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that we don't enjoy those things or enjoy things, but can you enjoy them without being attached to them?
You know, I got this thing while you were talking, and I have to say this is why it's magical for me to be able to talk with you, because what opens up in my mind while we're talking is something that I cherish. So I want to tie this back into some things that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks about
Hmm.
the birthing of this new stuff and the letting go of things, which was one of our topics. Um, it feels right now that I'm being squashed even more into to having to let go of the attachment and the outcome of it, and the stress I feel is by hanging on to the things that I think that I need to keep.
Hmm.
And to bring this into what the entire country is going through, and what we're all starting to feel, is I don't think I'm alone. And I think I was at why I was asking you, because you've got uh, a plethora of people coming to you with these same kinds of conversations. You, you know, because we're all experiencing this, and many of us don't know how to digest this and how to process this because we've never had to.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think we all, the opportunity has always been there, and we all have to become attached a multitude of times. That's called disappointment. So
mm,
when something doesn't come to us the way that we want it, we get disappointed. And the disappointment is equated to the heightened sense of attachment that we have to certain things. But and I'm not just kind of floating out uh, diatribes and again bumper sticker wisdom, but these are things that I myself personally have had to, I would used to say graciously lean into, but I've just fallen flat on my face
mm,
so many times, and um, everything that I was attached to is taken away, and and I can speak to you right now from here and say I'm so glad, but there's no way that I can tell you that or comfort you in that, because that has to become your experience.
mm,
I can throw out a lifeline and I can say, just be aware of your attachments. And if you can practice non-attachment, then how do you begin with something? Begin incrementally. Don't think that it has to be a clean sweep. But in your mind, in the observation of your thought, begin to go, okay, I'll try this. Perhaps it will work, perhaps it won't. But the reality is that in either case, I'll still be alive. I'll still be a functioning human being, hopefully. I will still be of value. And you see, that's really what it gets down to, is all of my attachments somehow I have equated to my value. If I'm not this, then I have no value. If I'm not this, and the truth is that if I never do another thing for the rest of my life, never do another thing for the rest of your life, you're worthy and valuable.
you know, I think you just struck something for me as I sit through this. That's one of the things that comes up for me, is because I've been taught that from little on, that as I grow older as a man and have a
Mhm,
family, for example, that I need to care for the well being of my family. And in this case, my child that's still in high school. And the sense of failure or self worth. I've started going down that road this last week, and then the other thing I'll do is start comparing my own Facebook page to other people's Facebook pages, and they got 5,000 friends and I got 300, and oh, I must not. It's interesting how I can equate my own worth with all of those things. And
sure.
um,
Can you observe that? So
res-
rather than trying to go, oh, don't do that, or oh, that's bad, or look at what a shithead you are, Jeff, for doing that, just go, look what I'm doing.
Mhm,
I'm in the poison of comparison. So notice it and just go, and be fascinated by that. And just like you said, because you really kind of gave yourself the answer, you were raised to think that way.
Mhm.
And we all were raised in these compartmentalized thing ideas of responsibility, and this is what it has to look like, and this is the torch you must carry. It doesn't mean that you don't do everything within your power to strive for your daughter, but carrying a leadened weight of worry
Mm.
around that doesn't help your daughter.
Yeah. And
By practicing non-attachment, it's almost as if you relieve her of the legacy of passing that on, because you may not say to her, you have to be responsible, but she's going to read it energetically from you by your actions. But if you start to cultivate new practices, again, whether you speak to her verbally about this or not, she becomes observant about what you're doing, gives her the permission to not carry that lineage forward. So there's it's it falls into the category of identity, that we become identified by our actions, by our accomplishments, by society and what we have, and the comparison of that.
mm,
And identity is a dangerous thing, because until we're able to be willing to sacrifice our identity for what? What's the ultimate goal? Freedom. The ultimate thing that we want is to feel free.
mm,
And as we may have talked before, freedom isn't futurized. Freedom is here, it's in us. But if I'm so locked into an identity or an attachment, I'm the one that's putting myself in the cage, that's preventing myself from experiencing the freedom. And it doesn't have to be so hard. And I speak for this myself. You know, we were doing all of these assessments about the schools and the 1,000 children we're serving in India and Cambodia, and where's the money going to come, and donorship kind of on halt, and supposedly the kids are supposed to go back to school in Cambodia next week and India on May the 3rd, and there's just so many logistics and so many things that are just up in the air, and I just go, whew. And I just go, it's an opportunity to breathe, to just breathe.
yeah. You, you know, um, what's interesting, as I was observing my feelings and how I feel when I think certain thoughts, the when you were describing not attaching to jobs, not attaching to identities and those sorts of things,
Right.
every now and then I would float into, well, what if, what if, what if? And I would feel my body go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this sort of panicked kind of fear thing, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And observing that when the thought goes to, what if I lose my house, right? Or what if I can't do this? What if
Mm-hmm.
I can't be a drummer? What if I, all of those things, as I float through that, and I feel my body go into panic mode, like, oh, and I think that is the moment that I need to observe it and let it flow through me and not try
Well,
to attach to
what you just described when you went, all of those things, the panic, all of that is the holding of the breath. And so whenever something happens to us and we go, the memory of that gets locked in cellularly within us, the holding of the breath, the emotion attached with the shallow breathing, the emotion of the fear. We've just got so much of that inside of us. And so when you are feeling that way, maybe simplify it for you by saying, oh, my body needs to be breathed,
mm,
and just breathe. Maybe not, oh, I need to clear my mind or I need to observe my thoughts. I'm holding my breath. I need to breathe my body. And if you just breathe your body, you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at what just deliberately oxygenating yourself can do for you. But again, it's the all of those things are stories, the stories that we tell ourselves, and this is the way it's supposed to look like. They're stories, and those stories make up our identities. They make up our the melodramas.
Mm.
I was reading again Ram Dass in did I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but he I was reading where he was teaching meditation in San Quentin. Did we talk about that?
You mentioned, I remember you telling a story about Ram Dass, but I don't remember the specific story.
Well, he went to visit and teach meditation to people on death row in San Quentin. And he said it was one of the most moving, riveting experiences of his life because all of those men on death row had been forced into a corner where they had no other choice but to surrender their melodrama.
Mm.
And they were just in a state of being. And so when they would meditate, he said light would shoot out of their body and it would just reverberate through him, and it was one of the most incredible, memorable experiences of his entire life. And he said, but the moment I would leave death row and I would go into the cell blocks that were the people who had life sentences, so not death row, but just the life sentences, it was a completely different story. They were so attached to
Mm.
the injustices or the systems or their anger or survival. They had not been pushed into the corner. They were just biding time.
Mm.
And he said none of those men, or rarely any of them, gave him the time of day or were interested in meditation or wanted to do anything. And I'll never forget in his book, he said, I had this thought, this paradox of what if somebody from death row was moved into or seemingly put into life sentence? In other words, there was a pardon. And would they still have that same sense of non attachment, that same sense of purity? Or would they then begin to accumulate one more time attachments? And I just thought that was so profound because that's it's like what has to push us. Remember, pain pushes till vision pulls. How big does the pain have to be in order to push us into an inescapable corner that we have to drop all of the attachment and all of the story
Mm. And be in
so that so that we can be this pure available vessel.
a state of surrender, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that to me is what the perhaps is. It's a state of surrender. Yes, I'm going to do the work. Yes, I'm going to make the call. Yes, I'm going to do all of the investigation and the planning that I need to do. And can I do all of these things and go, I let go. I let go of how it's supposed to look.
Mm.
And we can say it, but man, the true test is when you actually do get to let go.
Yeah. Um, I've only felt like I was in that state maybe twice in my life, and it lasted. It was a fleeting moment, but
Mm.
it felt wonderful.
Hmm.
One when I really needed to surrender something, and and the other time was that time that we always describe when we were out watching that sunset at a cell.
Right.
And what one of the things that I was thinking just now as you were talking is this, the monks and the people that meditate for what are they meditating to find? Is that what they're trying to attain, is a state of non-attachment and um, surrender. The
Mhm.
what did the Buddhists call it? The Buddhists that when they're meditating and trying to be I'm not that schooled in what some of
Well, it just in the commitment to enlightenment,
mm,
um, there is getting to this place of quiet calm where you're in the nothingness. You're not trying to observe a thought. You're not trying to count or do any kind of mantra. All of a sudden, you just fall into that deep void of stillness, and then to be able to obtain or keep or recall that stillness and then still be in the physical world. That's why that phrase, to be in the world but not of it,
mm,
means yes, I get to be in this world in physical form, but I'm not of the world. I'm not of the effect of the world.
mm.
And that's spiritual mastery.
I'm getting a sense as we're talking of my own feeling the need to control my environment
Sure.
W- in as I'm thinking about surrendering. I feel this, and I'm not even aware sometimes what it is I know. I think I need to control. Other, you know, just that
Sure.
I feel like I need some sort of control over what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And
And sometimes they'll say that the children who grew up in very chaotic atmospheres in those formative early years struggle the most with the need to control because they're trying to regain some sure footing that they didn't have in the way in which they formulated their thoughts about the world. And that makes a lot of sense too. But we all have control issues.
mm,
We're all attached to certain things. There's a very, very heavy veil that keeps us from what that true stillness of freedom feels like. So we have moments of it, and when we have moments of it, there's the wanting of the more of that. But sometimes the paradox is in the wanting of the more freedom, the more attached we become. Then we become attached to the freedom
mm,
rather than just continuously surrendering, continuously surrendering. And again, not to confuse or mix that up with not doing anything. So be in the world, be an advocate in the world, but don't let the world become you.
mm. So I don't hog the time because I could just keep on talking. And do you have anybody on your feet? Are there any questions on you on your see anything there?
Look on your phone.
And
You had some last week. Um, Kimberly, I believe.
yeah,
Um, Trying to remember. Uh,
uh, I'm looking to see if there's any questions too.
yeah.
Because when I get talking, and I know people are maybe commenting, but I'm not necessarily paying attention because
Hmm.
I'm focused on you, so I don't lose my own thought.
That's okay.
But if people are paying attention,
Or we can just, I like the idea of letting this be your your session. And how brave of you to do this in front of everybody.
well, I have to be honest that the things that I normally say and what we're talking about, generally speaking, would be reserved to a closed therapy session. And
And that's why I acknowledge your bravery around that. And I think it helps more people than you realize.
well, I'm not sure, but I would hope it would. Um, I know that uh, there are many that I've run across that would be afraid to have this conversation in front of another person.
Mhm.
And the only reason why I'm having it is because by me announcing my fear and vulnerability, that someone who's in that position and hearing your response, someone might be able to hear it and go like, wow, wow, that really is exactly how I feel. and maybe they aren't, you know, the people that are my friends and watching this right now are people that, as far as I can see, are people that don't have a problem talking about this sort of thing.
Mhm.
It's the one person that does and watches that I want to reach out to. You know what I mean? Um,
So you get to trust that. Let's go back earlier because you were talking about comparison, and you even took something like your your creativity in creating this forum, and you were already starting to compare it a little bit and
mhm,
wishing that it was bigger or it looked different than what it is.
mm,
And the roots are young, and the idea is still very fresh.
mm,
And I just want to suggest to you that you try not spend a lot of time wishing that you had more views or that you were doing other things or it did whatever, because again, you still don't know the life and the views after the fact and how it gets. You and I talked about how do we post this on YouTube, and
mm.
and when I did, I included it in a newsletter, and I believe there, I don't know, I haven't looked lately, but I think there was at least 170 views
Wow.
of me posting something after you did it. And so again, don't do that to yourself per se. Just enjoy the birthing of this idea
Mm.
and nurture it and allow it to. If you're getting something out of it, then trust me, somebody else is getting something out of
Well, I can assure you, my friend, I am getting more out of this than
it.
this. This is my therapy session.
And so here's the other thing too. Sometimes you'll throw a question at me
Mm,
and I will offer an anecdotal something, and then you'll go, ah. And I'm curious, what is it that you hear that makes you feel better? Not necessarily the words, but what is it that you hear moment by moment or question by question that changes the physiology of the way you're feeling?
you know, I've if I'm to examine it and really be honest, I think it's the idea that you're responding to the question, and I can tell you are that I feel like I'm being heard and understood.
Great. So it isn't so much the solution I'm giving you, it's the fact that somebody's hearing you, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
So it isn't so much the data that I'm giving you, it isn't the solution that I'm giving you. It's the feeling of being heard
Right, right,
that brings the calming and the peace to you.
right.
So,
And not that your advice and your wisdom and your suggestions are always valuable, and I do practice
because I'm very attached to what you think.
but 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 my my point is I do use that, but what
Yeah.
strikes me more is, and I think this is where, as a human being, where we connect is
Mhm.
when we feel a mutual feeling and sense of peace beyond what the words that are being spoken are. And
So, so that's a beautiful awareness. So you've been able to articulate to me and to everybody watching that the thing that feels best to you is the awareness of being seen and heard. So
right.
here's what you can do. Do that for someone else,
Mm,
and do that for someone else, and do that for someone else, and do that thing that brings the most benefit to you. And in the Buddhist tradition, like in the business world, it's really something because it's go out and help somebody achieve something that you want.
mm,
And so, in determining that what has been most valuable to you is to be seen and heard, then as the most connected instrument of the divine that you can be, go out and listen to people
mm,
and make it your intent to see them and to hear them, even the ones that it's the most difficult to see and hear.
Mm. Y-
Because a lot of times when we're all acting out, that's really when we want to be seen and heard the most.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's really when we want somebody to just be that solidity by which we can calm down and remember who
Mm,
we are. And so when you're seeing somebody doing things that you're really struggling with, they're mirroring to you your own heightened sense of fear and frustration. We're all just mirrors for one another. And if you can de-escalate someone else's pain and suffering by just with not any attachment, just listening to them, then that multiplies and returns back to us.
mm.
And that's worth far more than any monetary gift or any kind of other trappings that we could do, is to just be that person that does that for other people.
Well, uh, since this is about me, so, um,
Well, it is. It's your show.
well, that's the one thing that I've really tried to do and approach this is when I talk to people, it does whoever they are, musicians or whatever. My first idea was to have them play, but what it's become is me just asking them questions about how they grew up and how they
Hmm.
learned music, and it is something that on a monetary basis, a lot of people may not necessarily want to sit for an hour and just hear anybody tell their story about becoming a musician. However, uh,
Hmm.
I find value in it, and that person finds value in sharing their story. And that's the best I can hope for, even though in my mind, I wish I could get millions of views. It really, I would like,
Stick to this. Stick to the thing that it brings value to you and
right.
it brings value to the other person. And don't be attached to the other thing,
Mm,
because the other thing of nobody else is going to find this interesting, that's a story. I caught myself today going, people are not going to be uh, willing to give to the foundation, to our schools overseas, because they're going to be so. And I stopped myself and I said, that's a story, David. You don't know that to be true. Stop the story. And so I caught myself. And so those are golden things. Allow yourself to just be loyal to what feeds you. And
mm.
this is feeding you. So be loyal to it.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I can say for sure is that it has kept me from, in all honesty, I'm kind of prone to being negative, and I'm kind of prone to being dark and depressed.
Up until now.
I have to fight against it.
Say up until now. Say
Well,
it.
up until now,
Hmm.
you know, I actually, now that I've committed to doing this, especially this one with you, I actually thought in my head, now, what kind of shit would it be to come on here and be all depressed? It would not serve any purpose other than talk about a real solution and, the real stuff that's going on. Don't sit and bitch and moan and complain like I can be prone to do.
Right.
And so from the point of view that I've made a commitment to do these shows and interviews and to be productive, it kept me from going down that rabbit hole, and it actually did help me stay um, more focused and looking for solutions and, not being all dark and depressed. If
Right.
it, so, it has helped me immensely. And,
Well, good.
so I don't, I appreciate the fact that this is 4 weeks in a row, David. We, this is the fourth Tuesday at 3 we've done.
Oh my God.
And we've already been 55 minutes. And I swear to you, it feels like we just started talking
I know.
to me. And, um, there actually are some people tuning in and have tuned in,
Mhm.
and and then Jamie Lula,
Hey,
whom
Jamie.
we know and love, uh, and Kimberly and Jamie Brewer and some other people that I think may be new to you from through me,
Hmm.
which is your uh, the way you share with me has always made me feel more loved. Let me just I just feel loved and heard and understood. And you have, oh, this is going to be good. And I'm not trying to fluff your aura at all. But last night, so my daughter Mackenzie and I, she's going to be leaving in a few minutes to go with her mom.
Hmm.
We started doing this thing where we go out because there's one store that's open in Burbank, and it's the Donut Prince. And we every night at like 11 or 12, we go and we get donuts and we drive around for an hour and talk.
Oh,
And she was talking about her friends and having quality friends, and she said, I have this one person that is just like the she's perfect in the way that she's just no trouble, and she's just always nice and always loving and considerate. And she come up with all these words about this one friend of hers, and she said, do you know anybody like that? And I said, yes. And I'm going to be talking with him at 3 tomorrow afternoon. And that was because, you know, I have never known you to be anything but this peaceful,
oh,
radiating spirit that is just calming and soothing, it, regardless regardless of what's going on in your life. So I appreciate you from that. And
thank you.
and uh,
Send me a donut.
you
Mail me a donut.
right? A donut. Oh, we bought a dozen donuts last night, and I'm telling you right now, they are all gone. So,
COVID donut eating. Yes.
so we ate fruits and vegetables all day long, but we bought a dozen donuts and drove around and ate donuts.
Good. And you know what? She'll remember those drives probably for her whole life.
Right? They
So
they
good for you.
they actually have been quite fond. And so apologies to anybody if they happen to ask a question and we didn't get to them. Hopefully through me I asked questions that they were thinking.
There
And
you go. You intuited it
I
into the broadcast.
fingers crossed. And
Yeah.
thank you again, David. I'm going to take us out with something quiet. We still got a couple of minutes left. Is there any parting
Well, I wanted to kind of give you a task, if you will, and that is the one thing we talked about is seeing and hearing people. So see if you can make that a goal
Mm,
this week. That every day that you create the opportunity to see and hear people.
okay. Would you be willing and available to do this next Tuesday at 3 again?
I don't have my schedule in front of me, but you're good at texting me, and as soon as we're done, I will go and look,
And
and I can't imagine I will be anyplace else.
this is what I would like to put out for anybody who's listening is that task you just offered me is I would like to put out that others try it, and maybe
Yeah,
we could talk and then have people testify, if you will,
report back.
report
Yeah,
back, and this was what we did based on that. That would be really
and
wonderful.
maybe we could talk about the results of that.
That would be
That'd be
fantastic.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah, and I got a couple people going like, "Love this." So, I think
Cool.
that's a good idea. All right. I'm going to take us out in some soothing meditation music.
All right.
And
Don't forget to breathe, my friend, and I will see you next week.
okay, thanks, David.
All right. Bye bye.